Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Alright guys, this episode of Boruto is going to be adapting one of my favorite chapters of the Boruto manga, and I'm going to get into exactly why that is. For example, Kawaki versus Boruto, Kashin Koji revealing his true plans, and also Delta finally invading the Hidden Leaf Fields. But regardless, let's get into exactly the contents of this episode. Now, the first thing that happens is Kawaki has an interaction with Himawari. Kawaki is pretty much putting back the vase with glue, the glue that Boruto gave him, and Himawari is basically telling Kawaki like, hey, you don't have to do that. And then sooner or later, Kawaki agrees. Then Boruto comes in, basically scolds Kawaki, tells him, as soon as things get hard, you then quit. Honestly, this right here is probably the most boring part of the episode, but it's probably going to be about 30 to 45 seconds in the actual anime, so it's not necessarily going to be that bad. But afterwards, Boruto and Kawaki then basically talk about them training and then learning about the Karma Seal. They basically set up a sparring time where Boruto and Kawaki are now going to fight each other with their Karma Seals activated. This right here is absolutely insane. But before that, we did get some sort of comments from Kashin Koji himself. Now, Kashin Koji at this particular point is basically viewing in on Boruto, Kawaki, and Naruto and basically scoping out the situation. And in this first scene of Kashin Koji, we kind of get a little bit of insight about exactly what Kashin Koji is planning to do. In my review of the last episode, I talked about how Kashin Koji could possibly be on a mission of his own, because in that particular episode, Kashin Koji said it was pretty much his mission. So in this episode right here, he basically said that he thought that Kawaki was going to be heavily guarded, and he didn't expect him to be guarded by the Hokage, regardless that technically is quote-unquote heavily guarded. But Kashin Koji is more surprised that Kawaki is actually opting to stay there and not trying to escape. But regardless, the more interesting part is the fact that Kashin Koji said that now, since he's basically staying with the Hokage, he can't necessarily meddle and try to take Kawaki back, but he said he wouldn't be doing that either way. Now that right there was the first quote-unquote red flag for the Kata organization diehards. Then Kashin Koji basically said, Kawaki and Boruto, I'm counting on you. Now this right here seemed very weird. Obviously, Kashin Koji is a part of the Kata organization. His only mission right now is supposed to be to take Kawaki back, but now he's basically saying he's counting on Kashin Koji plus Boruto Uzumaki. Now we'll get into exactly why he said that in the future. Right now we're going to get into some other scenes. Now the next thing that we do get is Delta pretty much pissed off at Kashin Koji because Kashin Koji left her behind, and then Delta herself is getting a little bit suspicious that Kashin Koji might not actually return back to Delta with Kawaki. One of the things that we do have to point out right here is the fact that Delta has been suspicious of Kashin Koji from the start. Even before she actually came onto this mission, she basically came onto this mission because she was suspicious of Kashin Koji. But this right here was the first sign that we seen that Delta was a quote-unquote cyborg, and she was remodeled by scientific technology. A robot pops off of Delta's back, and then Delta says that she's going to basically track them with this thing. So this little ninja tech right here is going to be acting as Delta's eyes. Supposedly her eyes and this technology thing right here are actually linked together. And Delta also says that this scientific technology doesn't actually use chakra, so it won't be detected by the Yamanaka clan and of course the Hidden Leaf Security Corps. But in the next scene, and in my personal opinion, I think that this right here is going to be the biggest scene in the actual Boruto episode. This is going to be Kawaki versus Boruto. Kawaki and Boruto at this particular point, they're basically sizing each other up and going through the parameters of this spar. Again, this is a spar, but even though it is a quote-unquote spar, they're pretty much going to be going at each other full force with the Karma Seal. There's going to be some intricate things that Kawaki isn't necessarily going to be able to go 100% on. I'll detail exactly what that is later on, but for the most part, taijutsu wise, Boruto is going to be like trying to actually blitz Kawaki, and Kawaki is going to be trying to do the same. Now this right is going to be super interesting, mainly because from what we did see, what Kawaki did to Garo, Kawaki looked like he was like leagues ahead of Boruto. I don't necessarily want to say complete leagues, mainly because we don't really know how good Boruto's Karma Seal is. It might be a situation where Boruto's Karma Seal is a higher multiplication than Kawaki's, but you guys get the point. But one kind of cute scene that I do want to point out before they start to spar, Himawari says, go Boruto and you too Kawaki. I know it's kind of slight, but this scene right here actually does detail how Kawaki and Himawari are actually forming a bond. And again, the first scene of this episode is going to be Himawari and Kawaki basically talking about the vase, and Kawaki trying to glue back the vase. So of course it's just building a bunch of character development for the relationship of Kawaki and Himawari. But nevertheless, Boruto and Kawaki, they started going at it. The first thing is going to be taijutsu. Obviously it's going to be the first thing. Kawaki then does the cell multiplication. Himawari is pretty much dumbfounded, but at a certain point, Kawaki then fires one of those blasts at Boruto. Now in my personal opinion, I'm not necessarily completely sure if this blast actually does use chakra, and keep that in mind. Boruto basically looked at Kawaki like, are you serious? It seems like Boruto was actually scared to absorb that blast from Kawaki, because of course, as we've seen when he basically blew Garo in half. That blast is absolutely huge. Now it seems like Kawaki is not necessarily going that hard on Boruto. He's scaling it back a little bit, which is exactly what Kawaki said. The first blast, Boruto dodged it. The second blast, he was in the air, so he couldn't necessarily dodge it unless he actually did make a shadow clone. But I'm pretty sure the blast was going a little bit too fast. Boruto couldn't necessarily do that, so he actually tried to absorb the blast from Kawaki, and Boruto ended up not being able to absorb the blast. Now again, we're not completely sure if this blast right here comes from chakra. We understand Kawaki already told us that he doesn't really know how to use ninjutsu, and because of that, this might be a reason why the Karma Seal can't actually absorb this blast. Now I do definitely want to point out, it's not necessarily set in 100% stone, mainly because he was training alongside Jigen himself, and we expect that Jigen also has the Karma Seal, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities if Kawaki uses this on Jigen and Jigen with his Karma Seal absorbed it as well. But as of right now, we're not completely sure if you're going to be able to absorb that with the Karma Seal. This right here is going to be a very important thing, especially in the future when we do see Kawaki and Boruto fighting above a destroyed Hidden Leaf village. After though is a quick pan to Kashin Koji. The writers are basically making us understand that Kashin Koji is actually viewing in on this particular situation. Boruto and Kawaki, they start to argue because Boruto was like, hey, I told you I couldn't handle it, and of course Boruto wasn't able to absorb it, so he's pissed off. But Naruto interjects and he basically says like, hey, you guys are finished sparring, you need to form a unison sign. I want you guys to pay very close attention to this, mainly because this right here is going to be very interesting as well. Once Boruto and Kawaki's hands touch, there is an image of Momoshiki that popped up in Boruto's head, and also Boruto felt extreme pain in his Karma Seal. This right here was super interesting. Now, what we understand is that Boruto got the Karma Seal from Momoshiki. This right here is pretty much the first sign that Momoshiki is going to be a very prevalent part in Boruto's life for as long as he has the Karma Seal. Now, right after Momoshiki popped up in Boruto's head, Boruto's hand started to heal. His hand was all messed up because of the blast that he did not absorb from Kawaki, but as soon as Momoshiki popped up, his arm pretty much healed instantaneously. Now, it basically panned over to Kashin Koji, and this right here was super interesting as well. Kashin Koji was pretty much surprised. Kashin Koji himself seems like he doesn't necessarily have a lot of information about the Karma Seal, but also he was pretty much analyzing the situation, and what Kashin Koji actually said was that right there could possibly be troublesome if Jigen has the same ability. Now this right here is also basically telling us that Kashin Koji and Jigen are probably not on the same side. We talked about how Kashin Koji right now could possibly be on a mission of his own, and it seems like we're actually starting to figure out exactly what that mission is. He wants to gather up a lot of information about the Karma Seal to basically get some clues about exactly how and possibly how to take down Jigen. Now at this particular point, this right here was pretty much the sentiment. We weren't 100% sure, but we were kind of sure. Like, this was a theory that was thrown around back in the day, and this right here was super interesting. But at the end, it basically shows that Delta finds Kawaki and basically finds the location that he's at, and then Delta pretty much pulls up. The Yamanaka clan basically alerts Naruto. Naruto understands that Delta is coming, and then Delta pulls up, and the chapter is over at that particular point. The Boruto anime, in my opinion, is probably going to knock this adaptation out of the park. It's going to be absolutely insane, and I'm super excited for that. Let me know what you guys think about this chapter in the comment section below, and comment your favorite moment that you guys are most excited to see. Me personally, is going to have to be Boruto versus Kawaki, the Karma Seal fight. That right there is probably going to be absolutely amazing. But it's been your boy Baara, and we out.
It's a knife.